Hi guys, so it's me here again with another video. This time I'm going to be looking at the origins of our favourite nursery rhymes and fairy tales. Now, I find this so interesting because shit be mashed up. I mean, these are the things that I used to sing, or the Disney films I used to watch when I was little, and when you look back at them like 10 years later and you realise exactly how messed up they really are. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, so let's start with probably the most well-known fairy. Well, not, it's not a fairy tale. It's a nursery rhyme. Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. Now, at what point in this fairy tale... it's not a fairy tale. At what point in this nursery rhyme does it ever say that Humpty Dumpty is an egg? Where do you get the impression he's an egg from? His depictions in media have been like he's an egg, but what part gives you the indication he's an egg? But then again, it does get a bit disturbing if you think that Humpty Dumpty is a human who's just been like pushed off a wall and has probably broken every bone in his body. That's when it gets a bit disturbing. But no, Humpty Dumpty, he's not an egg. He's a human. He's not a human. He's not a human. He's a canon. He is a canon that was depicted in Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. Well, he's not a canon in that he's an egg in Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, so it's his fault. Anyway, Humpty Dumpty was a canon. He was a canon that was used by the Cavalier forces during the English Civil War. So they were the royalist faction who wanted to see a return to the monarchy. And he was used during the Siege of Colchester in 1648. Now, the story is that one of the parliamentary cannons damaged the wall beneath Humpty Dumpty. So Humpty Dumpty fell into the marshland beneath, and it is said that the royalists, or the Cavaliers, the king's forces, attempted to raise Humpty Dumpty back up, but they just couldn't because he was too heavy. His best days had gone by this point. So yeah, so Humpty Dumpty's not an egg. He is one of the weapons of war. Great, right? Great! Fun. So we can blame Lewis Carroll for this depiction of Humpty Dumpty as an egg. Okay, so moving on to one of my favourite Disney films, one of my favourite fairy tales, The Little Mermaid. The only issue that I have with it is, in the Disney film, there are no repercussions to her actions. She gets what she wants. She gives away her talent to get a prince and nearly loses him, and then everything just turns out alright in the end. It's a very different story in the Hans Christian Andersen original tale. Now, originally, the Little Mermaid, she lives in the... well, obviously she lives in the sea. Yeah, that's usually where mermaids live. And when a mermaid turns 15, that's the first time that she can go to the surface. So when Ariel is one of the youngest. She hears all of her sister's stories about the world above, the world of human beings, that she falls a bit in love with it. She falls a bit in love with the whole idea of humanity. Now, one night, she rises, she sees the ship in celebration, Prince Eric's ship, or the prince's ship, doesn't actually have a name in the original, and so a violent storm hits and the Little Mermaid saves him, and she delivers him onto the shore near a temple, and she waits until a young girl comes and finds him. However, the prince never sees her. Anyway, so the Little Mermaid, she's a little bit upset by this, just a little bit, and she goes to talk to her grandmother, and she asks them if humans live forever, and if they can breathe underwater. And her grandmother explains that humans have a much shorter lifespan than the merfolk, who have about 300 years. However, when mermaids die, they just become sea foam. They cease to exist. While, on contrast, their humans have an eternal soul that will live on in heaven. Now, the Little Mermaid, she decides, I quite like the sound of that, being on the surface, marrying a prince and having a soul. That'd be quite nice. Quite enjoy that. So she goes and visits the sea witch in the shady part of town. And she asks for a potion that will give her legs. And the sea witch says, alright, I will give you this potion if you will give me your tongue. Oh yes, folks, she doesn't just get a magic shell and get Ariel to sing her voice into the shell. No, she takes her tongue out of her fucking head. And she also warns Ariel, or the Little Mermaid, might keep calling her Disney counterpart, that if she becomes a human, she is never going to be able to go back to the sea. Which, bit of an issue. Give up your family for a man? No. And she also tells her that consuming this potion will make her feel like she's got a sword ripping through her body. Now, personally, I don't think I'd be too down with that. I don't think I particularly want to have a sword ripping through me. And in addition to that, whenever she walks on her feet, she will feel like she's walking on sharp knives and that her feet are bleeding. You know what, on second thoughts, at this point, I would have just walked out. I'm just like, it's actually not that bad, I'll become sea foam, it'd be fine. Brilliant. Oh, but oh no. She's also told that she will only get her soul if the prince falls in love and marries her. However, if she does not do this, if the prince marries another woman, on the dawn of the next day, Ariel would just turn into sea foam. And the Little Mermaid, being a complete and utter idiot, decides, you know what, sounds like a fair deal. Fair dues. So the Sea Witch cuts out her tongue, and the Little Mermaid, she swims to the surface and she takes this potion. Now, to be honest, I don't particularly feel like I would do the same in the same situation, but then again, I am 2 years older. And so she's found by the prince, who he falls in love with her beauty and her grace, and he loves to watch her dance, which she dances for him even though she feels like she's walking on knives. Why? Ariel, Little Mermaid, you stupid. You stupid. Anyway, so he decides, so the prince, he was being forced into an arranged marriage with another princess. However, he says he's not going to marry her because he doesn't love her. And he decides he's going to marry the woman who found him in the temple. And it turns out, plot twist, coincidence, that the temple girl is the princess he was arranged to marry. So they get married. It's all hunky-dory. And Ariel, she's a bit pissed off. She's just a little bit pissed. Because she has sacrificed everything. She's given away her talent. She has the most enchanting and beautiful voice in the world. She's given that up. She is now in excruciating agony whenever she decides to walk. She is facing the prospect of becoming sea foam in the next few hours. It's fair to say she's a little bit pissed. She's a little bit pissed at this. However, her sisters decide to come up with a plan. They're going to exchange their beautiful long hair for a magic dagger. The Sea Witch gives them this, and she says that if Ariel slays the prince with the dagger and gets his blood to drip onto her legs, they will fuse and become a tail again, and she can live the rest of her life like a mermaid. You know, she's got 300 years, it'll be fine. There's a lot you can do in 300 years. And her suffering will end. By this point, I would have already gone off and done it. I would have cut that bitch, you know. I've just given up I no longer have a tongue. I feel like I'm walking on broken glass when I walk. I would have killed him by this point. But no, she decides, because she's a good human being, that she is not going to kill him. So dawn comes, and her body dissolves into foam. But instead of just ceasing to exist like all the others do, she discovers that she's become an ethereal spirit. She's become a daughter to the air. And as she ascends to the atmosphere, she meets all these other daughters who have done what she has done because they strove to get a soul. And because of her selflessness, which at what point has she been selfless? Don't understand. She is told that she will be able to have a chance to earn her soul by doing good deeds for 300 years, and eventually she will have a place in heaven. Oh, okay. Right, so true moral of the story is become sea foam, because it's great. And of course there is that religious undertone, like she gives up becoming a mermaid because she just doesn't want the prince's love. She wants the opportunity to have a soul that lives on forever in the kingdom of God. Great fun. Great fun, folks. Definitely a change from the Disney tale. Definitely a change. Anyway, next nursery rhyme. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids lined up in a row. Now, Mary, the titular Mary Mary, was Mary Tudor. Queen Mary the First, aka Bloody Mary. Now, the whole thing with Mary is the amount of people that she executed during her reign for heresy. She was a nut job, just murdering every everyone who was in any way Protestant, which could be how does your garden grow? That could be what it's referring to, like, how does your garden of graves grow due to the amount of people that you've burned. However, where it mentions all pretty maids in a row, the how does your garden grow could also be referring to the amount of miscarried and stillborn babies that Mary had. And the funny thing about them was most of them were girls. So the pretty maids all lined up in a row could be referring to her babies being buried in her back garden. Great, such fun, innit? Such fun. And also there was a bit of speculation as to whether pretty maids could be referring to the guillotine. However, the guillotine wasn't invented at this point in history, I don't think, so it's unlikely it would have been that. However, it does fit with the line above, which is with silver bells and cockle shells. Now, silver bells were the colloquial name for thumb screws. So I don't think I really need to explain that they'd put your thumb in between them and they just tighten and tighten and tighten until they crushed your thumb. And the cockle shells were a similar thing, except they weren't attached to the thumbs, people. They were attached to the genitalia. Now, gents, I can't speak for you here, but I can imagine that would be agonisingly painful. Now, so that would fit more with the pretty maids lined up in a row. The maiden was the original name for the guillotine. So, however, it could take about 11 strokes to get the head off. Like, yeah, so it could be referring to this because the maiden had been in use long before Lord Morton, the region of Scotland, while James VI was still a child, had a copy of the maiden constructed in Halifax. However, he was the first one to experience it in Scotland, so eek. So yeah, it could be referring to the guillotine, the original guillotine. So, yeah. Okay, so my final fairy tale that I want to dissect is Sleeping Beauty. Now, so everyone knows the story. A girl pricks a finger on a spinning wheel. In the story, she gets a bit of flax, and that's what poisons her into this coma. However, the only difference is when the prince comes along, he doesn't just give her a quick peck on the lips, you know, true love's kiss will break the spell. No. It's never that in the original fairy tales. It's never the kiss that wakes them up. Like Snow White, it's the bit of apple that gets dislodged. In this, it's the bit of flax gets removed. It's never the kiss. However, this prince, he doesn't just stop here there. He doesn't decide to stop being a creepy bastard there. I mean, kissing a underage girl while she's in a coma is creepy enough. No, he kicks it up a notch. He decides, you know what I really want to do? I want to make some babies with that comatose body, because, you know, love me some necrophilia in the morning. So he decides that he is going to slither into a chamber of secrets and impregnate her. He does this and she gives birth to twins. She's not awake at this point. She's still in a coma. She she's in a coma while she's giving birth. It is only when one of the babies, looking for a breast, decides that he's going to suck on her finger, and that gets rid of the bit of flax. But then logic would kind of suggest that the baby would die. But anyway, that's got to be one hell of a shock. You wake up, you've been in a coma for about a year, and then you wake up and you think, what? You're a mother to two, you've had sex out of wedlock in a society that is very... You would have been a fallen woman after that point, meaning that you have to marry this creeper who you've never met, and has just decided that he wants to slither in. And it gets even creepier when if you believe that there is no prince. The prince is actually her father, the king. He fell so in love with his daughter's comatose body that he decided, I've always fancied her, and she always was very pretty. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fuck my own daughter while she's in a coma, and I'm going to produce some nice little incest babies. These fairy tales are so messed up. Bye bye.